So thank you for joining for the last out of this spring's series of some of our nutritional workshops from our students here at the OU Health Campus Nutritional Sciences Department over in the College of Allied Health. So finishing up this series with Fueling the Brain, Nutrition Strategies to Prevent Brain Fog and Boost Productivity. So excited for this one. I think that's probably why this one was so there was such high interest with this because who doesn't want to boost their productivity and just really have great brain function and all of those things. So think we're all excited to hear the great tips and information of how we can just have better productivity and our brain be sharper, especially as we age, because that just kind of tends to happen each year. I'm not quite sure how, but we can't really escape it. But hopefully, we'll get some great tips on how our nutrition strategies can really help with our productivity and our brain health. So, thank you to Lucy, Chloe, and Isabella for joining us today.
Okay, so hi everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Isabella, and I'll be presenting today with Lucy and Chloe. And our presentation is called Fueling the Brain Nutrition Strategies to Prevent Brain Fog and Boost Productivity. So today we're really focusing on how nutrition connects to something we all experience in our day-to-day lives. So our ability to stay focused, think clearly, and be productive throughout the day. So before we get started, I just wanted to briefly go over our learning objectives for today. Isn't it changing? Do it. Sorry. Okay, so here we go. So by the end of the session, our goal is that you'll be able to first understand what we mean by brain fog, cognitive performance, and productivity, and how those show up in daily work life. Second, we're going to identify key nutrients and foods that support focus, memory, and overall brain health. And third, we're going to recognize the difference between food choices that support steady energy and mental clarity versus those that may contribute to energy crashes and brain fog. So to start, I'm going to focus on that first objective and walk through what this concept actually means. So I want to start with a quick question. So have you ever opened an email, read it, and then immediately realized you didn't actually process what that said? So if that ever happens to you, so feel free to drop a thumbs up in the chat. We're going to be monitoring it. So this is very common. It's a common experience. And this is an example of what we call brain fog. So I'm seeing a lot of thumbs up here, and that's great because you're going to learn about that today. So brain fog isn't a medical diagnosis, but it's a term used to describe the feeling of mental cloudiness or lack of clarity. So it can show up as a difficulty focusing, forgetfulness, slower thinking, or just feeling mentally drained, even if you haven't done anything physically exhausting. So even though it might seem minor, it can really impact how we function throughout the day, especially in environments that require sustained attention and decision making. So what contributes to brain fog? Usually it's not just one thing, it's a combination of factors. So common contributors include poor sleep, high stress levels, and overall mental overload, especially during busy days with back-to-back meetings or constant task switching. So, but something that's often overlooked is nutrition. Skipping meals, going long periods without eating, or relying mostly on caffeine can all affect how stable your energy levels are throughout the day. And when our energy levels are constantly fluctuating, it becomes much harder to maintain focus and mental clarity. So even though we don't always make the connection, what and when we eat plays a key role in how our brain is functioning. So to understand why this matters, it helps us to look at cognitive performance. Cognitive performance refers to how effectively your brain is working at any given time. So this includes things like attention, memory, processing information, and decision making. So just a quick note. Okay. So when cognitive performance is strong, tasks tend to feel more manageable and efficient. But when it's reduced, even slightly, you might notice that tasks takes longer to get done, it's harder to stay engaged, or you need to reread things to fully understand them. So this brings us to productivity. And productivity isn't just about how much you get done, but it's also about how efficiently and effectively you're able to do it. And this includes maintaining focus, completing tasks, and making decisions and managing your workload. And productivity is directly influenced by cognitive performance. So if your brain is functioning as its best, it naturally becomes harder to perform your best. So all of these concepts are closely connected, and when brain fog increases, cognitive performance tends to decrease, and that immediately impacts productivity. So what does this look like in a real life situation? Imagine you have a full day with back-to-back meetings. You don't really have time to eat, and you're mostly relying on coffee. By mid-afternoon, you might feel mentally drained, have a harder time connecting and concentrating, and noticing that even simple decisions take more effort. You might find yourself rereading emails, losing your train of thought, or feeling just less efficient overall. And again, if that sounds familiar, drop a thumbs up in the chat. And that's a clear example of how brain fog can impact both cognitive performance and productivity in a very practical day-to-day way. So now that we all talked about how brain fog shows up in the workday, I want to make this a little bit more interactive. So we're going to do a quick myth or fact activity. So I'll show a statement in the screen, and then you can send your answer in the chat, just typing myth or fact. Are you ready? So this is the first statement. Dietary fat slows neuroprocessing because it thickens the blood and reduces oxygen delivery to the brain. I'll give you a couple of seconds. Ooh, that's great. Okay. So this one is a myth. You guys are right. So blood thickens doesn't really change with normal fat intake. In fact, healthy fats help keep brain cells and their protective coating working properly. So second statement, skipping breakfast does not impair cognitive performance in all adults. Some individuals maintain or even improve mental clarity with delayed first meal due to metabolic flexibility. Go ahead and drop your answers. Yeah, this is mixed. But we have more fact. So let's see. 1, 2, 3. This is true. So people's metabolism work differently, and our body is used to burning fat. If your body is used to burning fat, ketones can power your brain well without needing a drop in blood sugar in the morning. So next statement. Because the brain runs on glucose, all carbs are cognitively equal when consumed at lunch. What do you think about that? That was quick. Yeah, everyone, you got the right answer. This is a myth. So refined carbs make your blood sugar spike and then crash. Complex carbs with fiber release energy slowly. So this is the same fuel, just delivered very differently. Next statement. A short-term juice fast clears brain fog by reducing inflammatory compounds from digested food. Go ahead and drop your answers. Okay. This one is a myth. Cutting out protein and fat reduces building blocks your brain. Reduces the building blocks your brain needs to make key chemicals like dopamine and serotonin. So by the second day, that can actually make brain fog worse, even if inflammation is lower. So this is our last statement that we're going to read now. Eating the same number of calories earlier in the day tends to support better mental clarity than eating them late at night. Go ahead and drop your answers. Yeah, that was quick too. Good job. This one is true. Your body processes food differently throughout the day, so eating in the morning and midday helps fuel your brain better, while eating late at night can hurt your sleep and make it harder to think clearly the next day. So hopefully that helped highlight that it's not just what we eat, but also how and when we eat, and that can impact how we feel mentally. And now Chloe's going to build upon this by walking through specific nutrients and foods that support brain health and cognitive performance.
Okay, y'all did so good on that.
Go. Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. So y'all did great on that one. Apologize for the hold up. So is it not going to the next one?
I don't know.
All right. I'm sure you've all seen the brands that promise increased memory, recall, attention, and even IQ. AG1, Ketone IQ, Mosh, Mudwater, and so many others guarantee improved focus, mental clarity, and mood. And while these supplements are not unhealthy, adding a supplement alone is insufficient to improve brain function and health. Instead, it requires adding high quality whole foods and removing ultra processed foods and high fat foods from our diet. It's not just about adding to your diet like these brands want you to believe, it is equally about reducing the harmful components. Another important consideration is that supplements are aimed at optimization. That's not a bad thing, but optimization without adequate function isn't very possible. It's very difficult to do. You need to first address the vitamin, mineral, and macronutrient deficiencies before true optimization can happen. It's like trying to run a marathon with a broken foot. You're not going to hit a PR until the primary goal shifts to healing that foot. Once that's fixed, then you can focus on performance. So the goal with this presentation is to fill in the functional gaps so that you can optimize later. We're mostly going to talk about brain healthy foods, but I did want to highlight hydration as an important factor when talking about brain health and mental clarity. So our brains are about 75% water, and drinking water increases blood flow and oxygen to your brain, which is essential for all cognitive function. So in the next few slides, we're going to talk about three main components that make a food brain healthy. We're going to talk about what we should be reducing in our diet, what we should be adding, and we're even going to highlight how caffeine plays into attention and focus. So let's define what makes a food brain healthy. Every brain supporting nutrient falls in one of three roles: structure, function, and protection. When talking about structure, your brain is nearly 60% fat. The membranes of every single neuron are made of lipids, and if you don't provide the right building blocks, especially those omega-3s, DHA, then those membranes can become stiff and less flexible. This means that slower communication between neurons and poorer signaling. Without structural support, the brain cannot maintain its physical integrity. Second, we're going to look at function. This is about neurotransmitters primarily, energy production and signaling. For example, choline, which is listed here, is converted to acetylcholine, which is the neurotransmitter for memory and learning. And choline is found in eggs. So if you enjoy eating eggs, that is actually a powerful brain food, and that's because it plays into this functional role. The third we'll talk about is protection. The brain is highly vulnerable to oxidative stress. Protective nutrients include antioxidants, vitamins, and polyphenols like anthocyanin. These reduce inflammation and slow cognitive decline. It's really great to have a food that highlights all three of these. Most supplements, like we talked about earlier, talk about only function. They say that it boosts support or it boosts focus, it supports memory. But the best brain healthy foods are going to do at least two of these, and the very best are going to do at least three of these. So if they can hit the structure, function, and protection, then it's going to be a really great food that supports your brain. So let's talk about fat, because it's commonly believed that fat is the enemy. And I'm here to tell you that fat is not your foe, it is not your enemy. It's actually the foundation. There are two categories of fat. You can have a building fat and a damaging fat, especially when considering your brain health. These building fats are going to support all three pillars like we talked about: structure, function, and protection. Omega-3s, especially DHA, make membranes fluid and flexible. EPA reduces inflammation, and monounsaturated fats support membrane integrity. So they're really supporting all three of those roles. Damaging fats, complete opposite. They harm almost everything. So trans fats will make membranes rigid and dysfunctional. Excess saturated fat from processed sources promotes neuroinflammation, and a high omega-6 to low omega-3 ratio can drive chronic inflammation. So you can see the opposite effect of these damaging fats on that structure, function, and protection. And notice how I said excess saturated fat. Trans fats are the only ones we really want to avoid. You can have healthy saturated fats in a diet, but excess is really what we're wanting to reduce. So it's important to consider fat because you really cannot build a healthy brain without fats. So where do we get these good fats? Omega-3s, DHA and EPA, are primarily found in fatty fish. This can include salmon, sardines, mackerel, anchovies. We want to aim for 2 to 3 servings a week. If you don't eat fish, algae-based supplements and foods are also an option. They provide great omega-3s. There's also plant-based omega-3s. We're going to see that's going to be primarily ALA type, and those include walnuts, flax seeds, chia seeds, and hemp seeds. Your body actually converts ALA to DHA, but it is at a lower rate. So we don't want to primarily or only get our omega-3s from these plant-based sources. They do provide some, but not as much as the fish. So that's where we might consider the algae if you don't eat fish, or omega-3 supplementation. Monounsaturated fats are going to include avocado, olive oil, cashews, and pecans, and they support membrane fluidity and help absorb those fat-soluble vitamins like vitamin E, which is an antioxidant. Other good sources are the egg yolk we talked about. Dark chocolate has fat and it also has antioxidants. So those are going to be 2 other really great sources to get good fats in. So here's the problem. Your brain needs oxygen, and just existing and being active can increase oxidative stress. And that's a bummer. We cannot prevent all oxidative stress, but here's the great thing. There are a lot of foods that can reduce them and can act as antioxidants and could okay, can you fix that? So anthocyanins are natural antioxidants. Those are going to be found in your dark red, blue, and purple foods. They preserve neurons and protect cell-to-cell function. And we really want to just be focusing on eating all fruits and vegetables. So the solution for this oxidative stress that we have is just eating the rainbow. Okay, so different colors mean different nutrients, and each color is going to support your brain in a unique way. So when we're talking about our red fruits and vegetables, it's going to be your tomato, watermelon, grapefruit. They contain lycopene. It's an antioxidant linked to reduce risk of cognitive decline. We're also going to have orange and yellow. That's going to be your carrots, sweet potatoes, bell peppers. They're rich in beta carotene and vitamin C, which protect against oxidative stress and support immune function. Green, broccoli, peas, spinach. They have folate and vitamin K. And folate is really crucial for neurotransmitter production. And they also have lutein in them, which accumulates in the brain and is linked to improved cognitive performance. We have purple and blue, your blueberries, blackberries, eggplant. We'll talk about more of those on the next slide when we talk about anthocyanins specifically. Your white, your cauliflower, mushrooms, potatoes. I know a lot of doctors and other people out there like to say white foods should be avoided, but here's a great example of white foods that we want on our plate. So white is not bad. Color can include white foods. And those have really great anti-inflammatory and neuroprotective effects. So the simple rule, I know I threw out a lot of words, but the more colors on your plate, the more diverse the brain-supporting nutrients. A beige plate, think chicken nuggets and fries, that's not going to have a lot of those neuroprotective elements. So you really want to have that rainbow plate, just get as many of these colors through fruits and vegetables as we can. So to zoom in on one specific powerful group of compounds, we're going to look at anthocyanins. So those are pigments that give blue, purple, and red fruits and vegetables their vibrant colors, but they're not just pretty, they're potent brain protectors. They neutralize the free radicals that damage brain cells, reduce neuroinflammation, and improve blood flow to your brain. And they can actually cross the blood-brain barrier and accumulate in your hippocampus, which is your memory center, so they can improve your memory. Some great food sources are going to be your dark berries, so blueberries, blackberries, currants, your cherries, red cabbage. Just again, think those deep blues and purples. You're going to find a lot of anthocyanins there. You really want to aim for half a cup of berries most days. Frozen berries work just fine. They can be available all year round. They can be cheaper, so don't be afraid to go to the freezer section and grab some frozen blueberries. And you can just snack on those, add them to oatmeal or however you want to eat them. Just getting in fruits and vegetables are really great for your brain. So finally, let's talk about caffeine, because many people rely on it for focus, but few understand how it really works. So caffeine is an adenosine receptor antagonist. Adenosine builds up during wakefulness and makes you feel tired. By blocking it, caffeine keeps you alert, but it doesn't create energy. It borrows it from later, which is why we often crash. It also increases dopamine availability, improving sustained attention, but only to a point. Moderate amounts help reaction time and vigilance, but too much causes that jitters, the anxiety, and impaired memory. Caffeine's half-life is about 3 to 5 hours. Consuming it within 8 to 10 hours of bedtime delays your melatonin production and disrupts deep sleep, which is really important for your memory consolidation. So I'll give you a scenario. Your brain is tired, it's 4 p.m., so you drink a cup of coffee to get through your meeting. Bedtime comes, you can't fall asleep, and your deep sleep quantity is reduced. So you wake up tired and reach for your morning coffee, but again, you're exhausted now, so you have 3 shots of espresso, and because you're so tired, you crash at 3 p.m. and you have another cup of coffee, and this cycle just continues. So it's easy and probably realistic for many of you, myself as well, to get in this cycle. So what do? We need our caffeine. We need our coffee. There are 2 things. First, y'all may not like this, but you could try green tea. It has L-theanine, which is an amino acid that removes that jittery effect of caffeine and still provides caffeine. If you don't like that plan, well, you can also try consuming caffeine in smaller amounts and throughout the day, specifically 50 to 100 milligrams caffeine every 3 to 4 hours. If you start at 8 a.m., another coffee at 11 a.m., another at 2 p.m., that can reduce crashes. And you're reducing how much you're taking. So you're getting that little pick-me-up and you're getting some more energy, but you're not having that afternoon crash. And if you stop at 2 p.m., you're reducing that impairment on your sleep later. So caffeine is a tool. We want to use it early in the day in moderate doses and never replace sleep with it. And remember that caffeine alone won't fix a poor diet. It's just one small piece of the brain health puzzle that can boost that clarity and memory and focus when used properly.
All right, so now that you've heard what to eat, the nutrients and the foods, I'm going to talk a little bit more about how it extends past what you eat. It's actually when you eat and also how we pair that. And this is where we have the most room to make a fast and real difference in how we feel throughout the day. So, you could eat the most nutrient-dense food in the world, but if you're skipping breakfast before a long day or relying on coffee through lunch alone, of course you're going to feel it, and most of us do. Before we get into the science, I want everyone to think back to the last time that you hit that wall. You know what I'm talking about. It's between 1 to 3 p.m., where your brain feels like it's being dragged through the mud. You can't keep your eyes open, and all you want to do is lay your head down. Go ahead and please respond in the chat. What did you eat or drink, if anything, right before that happened? Okay, I'm seeing a lot of things that are really common. What? Carbs. Got it. Coffee, maybe a granola bar, maybe you skip breakfast. I'm seeing all of these here are so common, but this extends past a willpower problem. And that's actually good news because blood sugar, which is something that this is going to be affected by, is something that we can influence and we can influence quick. Let's talk a little bit about how. All right, so here's what's actually happening inside your body when you crash. When you eat something highly processed like that candy or caffeine and carbs, like someone said, your body is going to want to digest it very quickly. So this sends your blood sugar shooting up fast. You might actually feel a brief boost of energy or a little bit of clarity right after eating, but there's a catch. Your body wants to always maintain balance. So, when your blood sugar spikes, your pancreas is going to release insulin to help bring your blood sugar back down to where it was. But sometimes, with a big spike, it can actually overcorrect and bring your blood sugar below where it started. So, that is what we are going to refer to as the crash. That foggy, tired, and hard to focus feeling is actually your brain kind of running out of its preferred fuel. And the reason this is not your fault is because we live in an environment that is packed with these kinds of foods. They're everywhere, they're designed to be appealing, and they're convenient, and they're everywhere. And you're not weak for reaching for them. We just need to work on a smarter strategy. So one thing I'm going to hone in on this section is pairing carbs with protein, some fiber, and a little bit of fat. All of these are going to work together to slow that digestion down a little bit and hopefully get or reduce the crash and burn, and hopefully get a steady release of energy. So an example of this would be a bagel alone versus a bagel paired with eggs. You're getting a little bit of protein and some healthy fats from those eggs that are going to help slow down the digestion of that bagel and reduce that spike that we see with the bagel alone. All right, so when you eat matters. This slide shows your workday as a timeline, and this goes all the way from 8 a.m. or 4 p.m. or whatever your daily schedule is, and your brain and your energy levels at each point. So let's walk through a few of these important times. At 8 a.m., we already have a fork in the road. If you're skipping breakfast, like all of us do when we're either rushing or in a busy season of life, your focus is going to drop before your meeting even starts or your workday. So having something balanced before this point, even something small, is going to set you up for a better focus window in that 9 to 10 a.m. range that you see on the slide. So this is when your brain is going to be at its sharpest, so definitely do not waste it being hungry. And then going on, we have lunchtime, and this is where things get really critical and opening up for the potential for that crash zone in the early afternoon. What you eat during lunch directly impacts how your 1 to 3 p.m. feels. So a meal that is unbalanced, whether it's low in protein, low in carbs, low in fat, fiber, whatever the case may be, can set up that energy dip that you can see here on the slide. So my tip here would be to build your plate around protein, healthy fats, veggies, and some healthy whole grain carbs and let everything else fill in around that. So a balanced lunch will hit all three macronutrient groups of protein, fat, and carbohydrate, and all three are going to help stabilize blood sugar and keep your energy steadier through the afternoon. Then we have 1 to 2 p.m., which I'm referring to as the crash zone, and this is your brain fog peak. But some of you may be relieved to know that some of this actually is biological. I know Chloe mentioned this a little bit earlier, but everyone has this slight dip of energy that is regulated by your circadian rhythm in the early afternoon. However, an unbalanced meal at lunchtime may amplify this significantly. So if you're in a meeting right before this period and you feel like you just can't track the conversation, this also might be why. Then at 3 p.m., this is our intervention point. This is something that we can change fast. So a balanced snack right about this 3 p.m. time, so protein, fat, a little carb, can pull you out of that crash zone and stabilize your energy for the rest of the afternoon. The key word here is planned. If you wait until you're desperate or grabbing from the break room or something like a vending machine, you might pick something that spikes and crashes you again. All right. So now that we've talked a little bit about the timeline, let's talk about some specific decisions within that timeline and what we can do differently. So this slide breaks it down into 4 of the most common going wrong, and I came up with a swap for each one. So the first one, which is really common in the American diet, is a high sugar breakfast. You grab something sweet on the way in, whether it's a muffin, a croissant, a sugary coffee, something like that. You're going to feel fine initially, but that blood sugar spike that we talked about earlier is really going to set in fast. And by 10 a.m., you're kind of starting to fade away already. So a simple fix for this is just adding a little bit more protein to your breakfast to again help slow that digestion down a little bit. This can look like Greek yogurt, an egg, some nut butter on toast, and you don't have to overhaul your entire morning for this. Just add something to what you're already doing. Next is really common, skipping meals entirely. So when you skip a meal entirely, your brain is essentially running on fumes. Attention and memory are the first things to go, and that's exactly what you need during a long workday. The fix to this, it sounds easier said than done, but keeping a snack in your bag or at your desk, even something small, is going to help keep your brain fueled. And you don't need a full meal, you just need a little something here and there to keep you going throughout the rest of the day. Next, we have a heavy carb lunch, which is that unbalanced lunch that I was talking about earlier. We already saw this on the timeline. This isn't necessarily going to cause the afternoon dip, but it can make it significantly worse. The swap here would be eating protein and veggies first, and then maybe eating your carbs second. So same lunch, just a smarter order that's going to help slow digestion down and keep that blood sugar steady. Next thing that is really common with workers is going 5 or 6 hours between meals. This is where your energy can become really unpredictable, and you're going to feel moments of, okay, I'm okay, and then some really sudden drops. The fix here would be to eat every 3 to 4 hours and plan that 3 p.m. snack on your long days specifically, and put it in your calendar if you have to. It's just one thing that you'll thank yourself for later. All right, so I came up with some really practical and easy snack ideas that are designed to support brain function, and they're all easy, and most of these require 0 prep. So the first one kind of builds off of what Chloe talked about. You can assemble this one in the cup. It's Greek yogurt, dark berries, and flaxseed, and no prep is really needed for this. You're getting some protein from the yogurt, omega-3s from the flaxseed, and those great anthocyanins that Chloe talked about, and those are the antioxidants in dark berries that are linked to improved memory and cognitive function. The next pairing I have on here is just some walnuts and blueberries. Again, not really any prep at all, and easy to keep at your desk. Just a small handful of each will do. Walnuts are one of the best plant-based sources of omega-3s, and blueberries are consistently talked about as one of the top antioxidant benefit foods for the brain specifically. Next, we have green tea and walnuts. Green tea contains L-theanine, which is an amino acid that works synergistically with caffeine to produce a steady, calm, focused alertness, compared to a very different response that we see with the jittery energy of a strong coffee. Combined with the omega-3s and walnuts, this is a really solid afternoon combination, especially if you are sensitive to caffeine. The next option I have on here is just a hard-boiled egg with some cherries. Eggs are one of the richest sources of choline, which is critical for memory and nerve signaling, on top of having, again, a little bit of protein and some healthy fats as well. Cherries are high in flavonoids, which have multiple anti-inflammatory properties. So my tip here would be to boil a bunch of eggs on a Sunday or whenever you're prepping for the work week, peel them and throw them in the fridge. That way you can just grab and go throughout the week. All right, so I want to close on something really important because I know being in a session like this, it can be a little overwhelming. Like, okay, I need to restructure my breakfast, eat every 3 hours, meal prep on Sunday, but it doesn't necessarily have to be like this. My ask here is just picking one thing and starting small to build off of. Option one I have on here, I talked about eggs, whether it's a spoonful of peanut butter on toast, Greek yogurt. Protein is going to slow this digestion down a bit and keep blood sugar steadier. And research shows that actually having more protein in the morning can reduce impulse snacking later in the day. So this is just one addition, again, to something that you're already probably doing. Option two would be to eat something before your next long meeting. A lot of us wait until after a meeting to grab food just because we're rushing, but going into a long event means your blood sugar may drop during it, especially if you don't eat before. This is where you can get irritable, distracted, and start to lose the thread of conversation. Even something small beforehand can make a really big difference in how you feel, not only in that afternoon period, but also in the morning. Option three, again, keeping a small snack in your desk for the afternoon. Again, something with protein, fat, and a little bit of carb. An example would be some nuts, cheese, and a piece of fruit. This is really low effort and can have such a high impact in terms of how you feel. This prevents the 2:30 vending machine or break room run that I talked about earlier and means you're making an intentional choice instead of a desperate one. Throughout all of this, I want to summarize, think protein, fat, and carb for your snacks, and that is going to work to stabilize blood sugar and keep you focused throughout the rest of the day. So just pick one, try it this week, and then pay attention to how your afternoon actually feels. All right, and then with all of that said, we're going to move into the post-assessment, which is going to pull from some things that hopefully you've learned today. So the first slide will show the question and the answer options, and I want everyone to put their thought answer in the chat, and then I will flip to the next slide that reveals the answer. All right, so for this first question. Yay, B, you all got it. The question was, which of the following best describes brain fog in the context of daily functioning? The answer was difficulty focusing, mental cloudiness, and slower recall. All right, next question. Which combination of nutrients and food sources was identified as supportive to brain health? You guys are killing it. All right, the answer is B, omega-3s from foods like salmon, anthocyanins from things like blueberries, and choline from eggs. All right, for the third question, what happens in your body when you eat a high sugar or highly processed meal? Correct, it is B. Blood sugar spikes quickly, then drops as the body overcorrects, causing fatigue and brain fog. All right, next question. Which lunch choice would be the best to support focus during a 1 p.m. meeting? Correct. A grain bowl with grilled chicken, vegetables, and a small portion of brown rice. All right, and then for question 5, what is the main problem with drinking coffee after 2 to 3 p.m.? Correct. It is C. It delays melatonin production, disrupting sleep and worsening next day brain fog. Thank you. We're happy to take any questions.
Yeah, and while we wait to see if any questions come through the chat, I don't know about you guys, but I appreciated as we went through this that they never told us that we couldn't have anything. They gave us strategies, like we can still have coffee, but gave us strategies of, okay, how can we be more successful with still having these things as part of our diet or throughout the day? So we still get to enjoy one of those things that we're probably already having and not asking us or telling us to take those things away, but strategies of how we can be more successful with still having them as part of our day. Even mentioned dark chocolates can absolutely be part of your day, which I can appreciate. So a lot of thank yous in the chat. So yes, absolutely great information. A lot of times great reminders for us and how all these different things really play a part in us being healthy in a variety of ways, including our brain health. So how our nutrition plays a part in that, not just, having a healthy weight or anything like that, but brain health, so important. Someone asked, how do I adjust the timeline if I'm doing intermittent fasting?
I would say just adjusting within that intermittent fasting window. Obviously, if you're going to stick with it, and just making sure you're paying attention to how you feel during the day and not waiting too long when you're in that eating window to have a snack or a meal or something like that.
And then another asked, I was told that you shouldn't eat unless you feel hungry. Should you still eat every 3 to 4 hours, even if you don't feel hungry?
Yes, this is a really great question. Great question. Thank you for asking. It is really important to continue sustaining your energy. There are a lot of reasons that you may not feel hungry. Our body is really great at adjusting to fit the balance of what we're doing. If we're not eating a lot, we may feel less hungry if that's a consistent pattern, and you may undereat. And so, having adequate energy throughout the day, even if you don't feel hungry, just having a little something. It doesn't have to be a big meal every 3 to 4 hours, but like Lucy said, just having a couple snacks at your desk, having something you can easily grab that won't make you feel really full, but will still give you energy, will reduce the crashes you have later and will just constantly have some energy for you and can even regulate some of that hunger pathway stuff. It can get complicated, but basically, you want to regulate as much as you can, and having consistent energy throughout the day just keeps your body happy, keeps your energy happy, and you'll feel better.
Well, wonderful. Thank you, ladies, so much. Again, great reminders, strategies, information that we can start putting to action immediately. Like also that you reminded us, just pick one. We don't have to try to make all these changes to our diet or anything, but just picking one and working on that. And then as we master that one, maybe adding something else and just kind of being mindful to see how we feel, what our productivity and focus is like on what's really helping us. So thank you again, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.